Point of order, Fergus Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I regret I haven't had the opportunity to give you notice of this question as I normally would, but I seek your guidance under Chapter 13.6.6b and 13.8 with regard to how I can raise in the Chamber the plight of tourist accommodation businesses within the City of Edinburgh, whom, as from tomorrow, will be required to maintain records in order to pay the visitor levy as from July next year for bookings, for advance booking.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Thank you, Mr. Ewing. That was not a point of order. But I am happy to discuss with the member the many mechanisms that he can use to raise issues within this chamber. We move to the next item of business, which is a statement by Kate Forbes on TechScaler programme. And the Deputy First Minister will take questions at the end of her statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on the Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, it is with pride, optimism and some frustration that I address the Chamber on the progress of TechScaler. Pride because the programme is exceeding expectations. Optimism because its performance is contributing to Scotland's rise as one of Europe's fastest growing entrepreneurial economies. And frustration because even this undeniable success cannot escape political and, even worse, anonymous sniping. We should begin with what TechScaler does and why it matters. In 2020, I asked one of Scotland's most successful modern entrepreneurs, Mark Logan, to review Scotland's entrepreneurial economy. He concluded that Scotland has no shortage of ideas or ambition, but what we lacked is the density of experienced talent necessary to turn sparks of inspiration into globally successful companies. As Mr Logan put it, and I quote, "Since we're short on experience, we need to go long on education." And that's where TechScaler comes in. It's an ambitious idea designed to provide the kind of world-class support taken for granted in Silicon Valley, in Helsinki and in Paris. It operates across 13 co-working spaces and provides structured commercial education from ideation through to scale. That includes free national access to Reforge, one of Silicon Valley's leading prestigious providers of scale-up training. TechScaler pairs new founders with mentors who've been there and done it, supporting them over months, not just in one-off clinics. And it's also about culture and community, creating the events, the networks and the peer learning that make an entrepreneurial economy thrive. So nearly 3 years on from its creation, let's examine TechScaler's performance. Membership stands at 1,300 startups and applications continue to accelerate. 35% of members are women, well above industry averages. It's perhaps no coincidence that a new study from JP Morgan shows that investment in female-led businesses has risen 10.5% in the last year, compared to a 29% fall in England. Collectively, members have raised £195 million of investment, and Sifted, the FT's startup platform, ranks TechScaler as among the best founder communities in Europe. This year, 18 members have won Scottish Edge Awards, and 3 TechScaler companies, Malted.ai, Simple Online Healthcare and Wordsmith AI, are named in Tech Nation's Future 50, a programme focused on companies with a $1 billion potential. And TechScaler is far from the totality of the offer. Today, as part of our commitment to Anna Stewart's Pathways report, I can announce £1.16 million for 14 organisations to support new entrepreneurs across Scotland with a focus on women and underrepresented groups. Now, none of this is to say that TechScaler is perfect. The contract was awarded on the basis of both cost and quality to Codebased, a local ecosystem builder, itself a startup that has scaled operations rapidly. This is a new and ambitious programme offering a complex mix of services at national scale. It's only natural that there continues to be scope to refine and optimise. There are challenges to overcome and opportunities that can only be realised if TechScaler is able to adapt and change. In the post-pandemic economy, the focus on physical co-working has been challenging, as has creating a focal point for the entrepreneurial community in regions where none has previously existed. The startup world also evolves quickly, and since the Logan Review, investors are turning towards deep tech, requiring TechScaler to pivot to emerging sectors like AI, medtech and robotics. Like any startup in a fast-moving environment, that requires TechScaler to improve its leadership, its agility, its execution. It will also require accountability for results and a positive approach to partnership. We want TechScaler to be one of the best programmes of its kind anywhere in the world. That's why earlier this year, long before any of the recent anonymous criticism, I commissioned an early independent review, and I'll shortly meet Codebase's chair, the exceptional Gillian Docherty, Chief Commercial Officer of Strathclyde University, to discuss the emerging findings. But, Presiding Officer, the unfortunate reality is that we're not here to discuss the rationale for TechScaler, nor its performance, nor even to debate how it could be optimised. Instead, we're here because some see political capital in a series of unattributed, unsubstantiated claims that have been made in the press. So let's address those claims head-on. TechScaler's international programme helps startups to go global, connecting to investors, entering new markets and enabling founders to benchmark their companies against world-class competitors. TechScaler covers the cost of workspace, of economy flights and accommodation. Participants cannot claim for any additional travel or subsistence costs. This part of the programme represents 2% of TechScaler's spend to date, and as we shall see, that is far from excessive by international standards. Quite deliberately, the programme does not have a militarised schedule. It's about supporting serious entrepreneurs from Scotland to live and work in the world's best ecosystems for an extended period. In this regard, TechScaler mirrors international best practice. Germany pays for founders to base themselves in Silicon Valley with free space and expert support. The Nordics go even further, clubbing together to operate a series of scaled startup incubators across the US and Asia with subsidised travel and accommodation, allowing founders to focus on growth, not logistics. And the Finns go further still, investing in local housing to support founders to live and work in Silicon Valley for a full 3 months. That is the level of ambition that we're competing against. The real question is not whether TechScaler goes too far in relation to international exposure for founders and entrepreneurs. It's whether it's doing enough. In a few cases, participants have chosen to extend their stay beyond the programme, joined by partners. But that was entirely at their own personal expense, and no public funds were used for those purposes. My officials have, however, made clear to Codebase's leadership that where public funds are concerned, appearances matter, and the highest standards of propriety must be upheld. Most importantly, the international programme has been a huge success. Multiple export contracts have been secured, 6 participants secured £5.4 million of investment, and several other firms are in dialogue with investors. And showcasing Scottish companies has put us on the entrepreneurial map. TechScaler has now hosted inward visits from 12 countries, including America, Singapore and China, all keen to partner with TechScaler and invest in Scotland. Since the anonymous criticisms were published, business leaders have expressed their views publicly. Wes Beard of Conversible said, and I quote, "The fact that this has been reported as a free holiday is not only factually inaccurate, but an insult to the entrepreneurs." Daniel Grant of Fern said, "I have never heard anyone call these trips a holiday." Natalie Gary of Dan Singh said, "We arrived with no US clients. We now have contracts signed and a clear strategy to scale in the US. And Sandeep Kasi, a Tokyo-based partner at Antler, a global VC fund, said, "The quality of the founders that travel to Japan is proof that Scotland is set for success. Japan can be a key territory to drive this." Presiding Officer, I could continue with these testimonials, but I prefer to conclude positively. 5 years ago, this government set out a vision to establish Scotland as one of Europe's fastest-growing entrepreneurial economies. That vision is now a reality. The latest analysis shows that Scotland is growing at a rate of 19%. 19%, well above the UK at 12.5%, and nearly double the rate of Sweden and the Netherlands. Last year, investment into Scottish companies also grew by 19%, even as global markets stalled. And reports from multiple sources record business start-up rates growing at record levels. As the Chief Entrepreneur Anna Stewart told me last week, Scotland's back in the game, a recognised player for the first time in decades. In this chamber, members frequently and rightly challenge me to support policies and projects that will drive economic growth. That is what TechScaler is doing. And I'd hate to see that progress compromised by these anonymous briefings. So I say sincerely to the Chamber, help us with your support, your ideas, your challenge, because together we have a genuine opportunity to transform Scotland's economy and back the initiatives that are delivering results. Thank you.
Thank you. The Deputy First Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business. And I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons. And I call Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Deputy First Minister for her statement and also for advance sight of it. And we asked for this statement not to criticise the ambition of TechScaler, or indeed to criticise Codebase, which I had the pleasure of visiting with some colleagues earlier this year, but simply to try and get some clarity concerning information about the use or potential misuse of public funds put in the public domain thanks to the investigative journalism of the Sunday Post newspaper. And this relates to claims from whistleblowers that overseas trips funded by TechScaler were not properly supported, and that those organising them attended with their partners, treated them effectively as a jolly, and were barely seen at meetings or events. And surely even for this government, that should be a matter of concern, instead of them seeking to castigate journalists and seek to diminish evidence as fake news in Donald Trump style. So let me ask the Deputy First Minister 3 questions. The Scottish Government at the weekend accused me of spreading misinformation, but when challenged couldn't substantiate that claim. So can I ask directly the Deputy First Minister, what is the misinformation I'm accused of spreading? Secondly, why was all the negative feedback from participants in these trips redacted from paperwork released under Freedom of Information to journalists? Why did the Scottish Government not want to give a balanced view on the value of these trips, or was the negative feedback simply too embarrassing? And thirdly, the Deputy First Minister said that collectively members of TechScaler had raised £195 million. That's a very healthy total. Can she tell us how much of that total comes from exclusively private sources, as opposed to government-backed funds such as the Scottish National Investment Bank, Scottish Enterprise or Power Equity?
Deputy First Minister.
So, can I first of all thank the member for leading his question by saying he's not here to criticise TechScaler or Codebase. And I think that is so important, that when it comes to initiatives that are actually delivering results, the more cross-party support there can be for these initiatives, the better. So I'm very grateful to him for outlining that point. Secondly, let me confront the 2 points he made. First of all, about misinformation. Now, I quoted to him in the statement the direct rebuttals on the record from businesses and founders that had been involved with these schemes, all of whom strongly rejected any suggestion that these were jollies or holidays. In fact, the one person that had gone on the record and was quoted in the newspaper headlines then promptly went to say that he totally rejected the characterisation of TechScaler, and he said that in his own words. So I think that is quite conclusive in terms of the challenge that these are somehow holidays. And I prefer to listen to people who are happy to speak in their own name. Secondly, let's talk about the redactions. Now, the point here is that TechScaler, rightly so, is taking feedback. And I would expect them, they're in their third year of operation, I would be expecting them to take on board feedback. And that feedback is vital. It allows us to take on board areas for improvement, as well as to recognise those areas that have been a success. But that feedback, the redactions were on the basis of two reasons. One, there were some elements that were commercially sensitive, and I think nobody's disagreeing with that. But secondly, that information was provided on the express basis of an anonymity. Now, if the same people that are so keen on reducing or removing that anonymity can't even get anybody to go on the record in the press without their names being removed, I think that says it all. And the last point, in terms of the £195 million, in terms of the split for that, I'm more than happy to come back to him in terms of splitting it down. I've previously given comments in the Chamber on the breakdown, but I'd rather probably give it to him in writing.
Pam Duncan-Clancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for advance sight of her statement. I agree that tech sailors are providing and proving to be a significant driver of Scotland's tech ecosystem, and we hope the concerns raised will be considered by the DFM's early independent review so that tech sailors can maximise their positive impact on Scottish businesses. Tech sailors were, of course, central to Mark Logan's recommendations, but so too was the skills pipeline. Indeed, he's right to say that we need to go along on education. This is an area, though, where progress has been more limited. Inspiring young people into technology careers, including AI and robotics, is crucial to addressing those skills gaps. Yet last year, computer and science teacher numbers were at an all-time low, with computer and science deserts across Scotland. So, can I ask the Deputy First Minister, can she outline a comprehensive plan to ensure young people can access technical skills in schools nationwide, and how many additional computer and science teachers will be deployed as a result?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank the member for her question also, and just reflect on the fact that I do enormously value the cross-party support that has always existed for the implementation of the STAIR review, Mark Logan's review, and grateful to hear that confirmed again. In terms of the centrality of education, she is absolutely right to say that there are a number of education programmes that are offered through TechScaler, and those are offered, they're tailored to different stages of the founder journey. I mentioned Reforge membership. Now that is a premium education programme. It's globally respected, and it is probably something that is underappreciated in Scotland, that our scale-ups have access to it. But we also have some other programmes. We have TechScaler Discovery, that's a free online programme to support individuals at the earliest stages of their journey. There's a Catalyst Accelerator, that's a 10-week hybrid programme. And these programmes are delivered in many cases by experienced founders and industry experts. Now, in terms of embedding that in our schools, I was delighted last year to confirm that for the first time ever, we now had entrepreneurial education provided to the whole school experience from P1 to S6, because of the way that we had provided funding to key organisations. And that means that young people at different stages of their own school experience have access to some of that entrepreneurial learning. Gen Plus was one such programme that benefited, and there's others as well. The challenge to recruit computing science teachers continues, and I know it's something that the Education Secretary is very much committed to, and it's an area of collaboration across government.
I call Kenneth Gibson to be followed by Stephen Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the Deputy First Minister's statement. It's truly heartening to see Scotland doing so well in such a globally competitive sphere, and I congratulate all concerned. Given the scale of success and return relative to a modest Scottish Government investment, which represents but a fragment of the Scottish budget, Does she agree that, over and above the £1.16 million announced today, a significant increase in the resources allocated to the TechScaler programme in the next budget is necessary to take it to the next level, with all the private investment that will attract and employment and economic growth that will undoubtedly follow?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the member will appreciate that in my engagement with the Finance Secretary, I'll be making a strong case for investing in programmes like TechScaler, because obviously the more prosperous our economy, the more revenues are raised and then reinvested in our public services. And I come back to this: where there is a project or a policy or an initiative that works, we should back it.
Stephen Kerr, to be followed by Audrey Nicholl.
The Deputy First Minister has used this afternoon in the Chamber while discussing whistleblowers. I really think this goes to the heart of how this SNP government work. They love to silence dissident voices. That's what they love to do. And where people have offered, because let's be frank about what's happened here. The government claim that the FOI redactions on the TechScaler feedback were for commercial sensitivity. I think that's an exaggeration, because investigative journalism at the Sunday Post revealed the redacted information was actually negative feedback. So the government doesn't want to hear negative feedback. The government doesn't believe, it would appear, in the value of whistleblowing. Will the Deputy First Minister consider her attitude towards those who fear speaking out but wish to do so on the basis of their anonymity, so that what they have to say can be heard in a country that increasingly lives in the fear of how this SNP government operates?
Deputy First Minister.
I base everything that I say on fact, and Daniel Grant was the only named individual in the Sunday Post article. He then took to LinkedIn to say, and I quote, "He has never heard anyone call these trips a holiday, and yet in this chamber alone I've already heard the opposition refer to that as that." I would rather take Daniel Grant's word than Stephen Kerr's word.
Audrey Nicholl, to be followed by Martin Whitfield.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Yesterday, I had the great pleasure of attending the opening of the new Energy Transition Skills Hub in my constituency, a collaboration between North East Scotland College, ETZ Limited and Shell that will power an evolving energy workforce, and I'm confident will play its part in producing some of our future TechScaler talent. So I very much welcome the Cabinet Secretary's update on TechScaler International Programme, helping start-ups go global and access new markets overseas. But can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what action the Scottish Government is taking to incentivise our ambitious founders and scale-ups to remain right here in Scotland?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that TechScaler is having an impact in the North East. The whole premise of the programme was to ensure that the initiative wasn't just concentrated in Glasgow or Edinburgh, but actually had ability to support entrepreneurs right across Scotland, which is what makes it such a critical programme. The question of how we retain skilled firms is in some ways a nice problem to have, because it's symptomatic of the growing pains of a thriving but still emerging entrepreneurial economy. All scale-ups need three things: access to the right talent, access to capital and access to the infrastructure relevant to their businesses, and that is what we're trying to deliver.
Martin Whitfield, to be followed by Emma Harper.
I'm very grateful, Presiding Officer. The Sunday Post asked Codebase what kind of selection process was carried out. Their response was that ultimately the value that's the contributing individuals, derive from these programmes depends on their commitment and approach. TechScalers have a crucial part in the tech ecosystem, and they are worthy of public money to support. So will the Scottish Government's scrutiny and accountability reflect this individual commitment and approach?
Deputy First Minister.
Yes, so TechScaler is only in its third year, as I said. It's improving year on year, and the feedback processes allow it to continue to improve. So one of the areas was the balance between application processes and selection. In other words, tailoring a programme to those who would benefit the most. And as you heard from some of the testimonials, those that have gone out and had achieved basically international contracts that wouldn't have had them otherwise is indicative of their commitment to pursuing those opportunities. So he's absolutely right to highlight that.
Emma Harper, to be followed by Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Investment in Scotland's talent also means mentorship, training and partnerships that help our entrepreneurs to innovate and build. Can the Deputy First Minister say any more about the advice and support that TechScaler provides to founders and entrepreneurs?
Deputy First Minister.
So the whole remit of TechScaler is to build relationship. So rather than just having an education programme where people turn up for a one-off clinic, hear some great advice and then leave, the whole point of TechScaler is to try and embed a bit more flexibility to be based on in and around networks and around that mentoring programme, side by side with world-class educational facilities.
Lorna Slater, to be followed by Willie Rennie.
I note the support under the TechScaler scheme for international flights and for what the Deputy First Minister calls deep tech, such as AI, which can have high energy needs. How is the Scottish Government ensuring that this programme is supporting their stated ambitions of transitioning to net zero? What is the carbon cost of all the money that has been spent on TechScaler, and what will it cost the public purse later to sequester this emitted carbon?
Deputy First Minister.
I really like the way that the member has framed that, because she's absolutely right that a lot of these companies are involved in the sort of support for transition and support when it comes to the innovation that's required for us to meet our climate change goals. She may have heard in my statement that the spend on the international element is only 2% of the overall spend, and considering the level of capital that's been raised is about £195 million. If even some of that is being reinvested in helping us to innovate to get to net zero, I think that's money that's well spent.
Willie Rennie, to be followed by Jackie Dunbar.
Just 8% of firms have full access to the necessary skills to effectively use AI tools and tech. That's according to Hays, the specialist recruitment agency. But in the last 20 years, we've lost almost 30% of our computing science teachers. So how will TechScaler succeed if we don't have the skilled workers necessary to work in that sector?
Deputy First Minister.
This is an area that is worthy of a much longer answer than I'm about to give. But TechScaler, I think, is one part of the answer. So TechScaler obviously equips, enables, supports founders. And one of the points that's frequently put to me is that when you start building up a density of companies, entrepreneurs all doing this, it makes it a lot easier to attract the skills to Scotland in the first place when there is that density of activity. But it equips, TechScaler has got such a focus on the educational element of this. The challenge to the answer that I'm giving is that TechScaler is self-selecting. In other words, those that are already interested in developing a business or whatever, particularly with a focus on AI, will probably self-select to become part of a TechScaler programme. And the question he's asking is about that wider cohort of people that don't feel they have the AI skills. Richard Lochhead just launched an AI Scotland programme, which is specifically designed to embed AI much more widely in public and private sector, and that a big part of that is equipping people with the skills to make them confident in either applying or working with AI.
Jackie Dunbar, to be followed by Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Thanks to the work of the Scottish Government, TechScaler successfully raised over £100 million of capital investment last year from both public and private sources, and is supporting businesses across medical technology, artificial intelligence and space. Can the Deputy First Minister say any more about the importance of collaboration with the private sector and the importance of attracting that confidence and investment in Scotland's early talent?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, collaboration is critical here because the success of TechScaler members in securing £195 million of investment is a powerful reflection of the confidence that investors have in Scotland, and credit goes to the exceptional founders whose innovation is driving Scotland's growth. But it is rooted in collaboration. So a prime example would be TechScaler's partnership with Scottish Edge, Scotland's leading business funding competition. Through the TechScaler-sponsored Young Edge Award, TechScaler provides funding to innovative founders under 30 alongside access to its education and mentorship programmes. And this year, 18 TechScaler members won Scottish Edge Awards. So from my perspective, it's brilliant to see the ecosystem work together, and long may that continue.
Craig Hoy, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Deputy First Minister share my view that in order to succeed, projects such as TechScaler must enjoy public confidence and also the support of members of this Parliament? And whilst the Deputy First Minister says that government-funded overseas trips should not be run to a militarised schedule, this is one business leader's account of the trip. They went out drinking all night, and even when the stuff was organised for the next day, not by TechScaler but other organisations, they didn't turn up because they were sleeping it off. Some of them did it every single day. The FOI response was heavily redacted, and apparently other criticisms of the programme were redacted as well. So would the Deputy First Minister join me in encouraging this FOI release to be re-released with only commercially sensitive information redacted?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, if a survey is responded to on the basis of anonymity and confidentiality, I think it is pretty challenging then to breach that confidentiality, not least because people over in these benches have been encouraging me to respect the anonymity of whistleblowers.
Drona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Recent figures confirm Scotland is by far the fastest growing start-up economy in the UK and fast becoming Europe's leading start-up nation. This success comes despite a challenging fiscal environment where Labour's tax on jobs is harming growth and Brexit's limiting access to talent across the country. Can the Deputy First Minister say any more about the policy choices of the Scottish Government and how can we build on this momentum?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the member is right to talk about some of the global headwinds and some of the challenges that we are encountering right now, which is all the more reason to support and back the initiatives that are actually having an impact. And looking at the outlook for TechScaler, even after 3 years, it demonstrates that the strategy is working. Every major indicator, start-up rates, investment of risk capital, the size of later-stage investment deals and external investment is growing rapidly, often bucking UK-wide and global trends. In other words, it's working. And I sincerely hope that members across the chamber can find it within themselves to back something that works.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement. Point of order, Stephen Kerr.
Presiding Officer, since I mentioned whistleblowing in the chamber, I should be transparent in making it clear that in my register of interests I am a director of Whistleblowers UK, which is a not-for-profit which is set up to advocate for a more positive environment for whistleblowers and whistleblowing.
Thank you, Mr Kerr. It's not a point of order, but your comments are on the record. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business.